The silver spaceship broke through the clouds above New York City on a clear Tuesday morning. It was large enough to cast a shadow over Central Park, but made no sound as it hovered. The world held its breath. Jack Miller stood at his post near the entrance of the United Nations building. At 42, with graying hair at his temples and 15 years as a paramedic before becoming security, Jack had seen many strange things, but nothing like this. All security personnel maintained positions, came the voice through his earpiece. Jack straightened his tie and watched as black government cars pulled up to the building. 3 days after the ship's arrival, the aliens had sent their message. They called themselves the Galactic Confederation, a union of 36 different intelligent species. Now they wanted to meet Earth's leaders. "They look almost like us," whispered Carlos, another guard standing nearby, as the first aliens stepped out of their transport. The aliens called themselves the Volari. They walked on 2 legs and had 2 arms, but their skin was pale blue and their eyes were large and completely black. Ambassador Skatal led the group, wearing what looked like flowing silver robes. Jack watched as the aliens were escorted inside. His job was to stand guard during this historic meeting, nothing more. He followed at a distance as they entered the main assembly hall, which had been prepared for this moment. The Secretary General greeted the aliens warmly. "We welcome you to Earth and look forward to learning about your confederation." Ambassador Skatal bowed slightly. "We have observed your world for some time. Despite your young civilization, you have shown remarkable progress. We invite humanity to join us as the 37th species in our peaceful alliance." Cameras flashed and reporters scribbled notes frantically. Jack maintained his position near the west wall, scanning the room as he'd been trained to do. That's when he heard it, a faint cracking sound from above. Jack looked up at the ornate ceiling with its heavy chandeliers. A thin line was spreading across the plaster. No one else seemed to notice. The Secretary General was still talking about cooperation and friendship. The alien delegation stood directly beneath the weakening section. Jack didn't hesitate. He sprinted forward, pushing through the crowd. "Everyone move," he shouted, rushing straight toward the aliens. The Volari guard stepped forward, their hands moving to devices at their belts. But Jack wasn't attacking. He was pointing upward. "The ceiling. Move now." Ambassador Skatal looked up just as the first pieces began to fall. Jack reached the group, grabbing the ambassador and pulling him sideways as a massive chunk of plaster and metal crashed down where they had been standing. For the next 30 seconds, everything was dust and confusion. Jack pulled 2 more aliens to safety, then a human diplomat who had frozen in shock. His old paramedic training took over as he checked each person for injuries. When the dust settled, Jack found himself face to face with Ambassador Skatal, whose black eyes studied him intensely. "You ran toward the danger," the alien said, sounding puzzled. "When the ceiling began to fall, you ran directly toward it." Jack shrugged. Someone needed help. The ambassador turned to another Volari, speaking in their clicking language. The second alien seemed agitated, gesturing at Jack and then at the damaged ceiling. Later, Jack learned that in Volari culture, running toward danger was considered either madness or an act of aggression. The concept of rushing into harm's way to help others simply didn't exist in their evolutionary history. That evening, as medical teams treated minor injuries and engineers examined the structural failure, Jack overheard 2 Volari discussing humans in their broken English. "Fascinating species," one said. "Some ran away from danger, as is logical, but others ran toward it. Most unpredictable." The second alien nodded. "We must study this behavior. For now, I suggest a safety protocol. In an emergency on this planet, observe which direction humans run. It may save your life." Jack smiled to himself as he filled out his incident report. First contact had certainly been memorable, and humanity had made quite the first impression. 6 months after first contact, Lisa Rice floated through the curved hallway of the Harmonious Exchange a Confederation vessel that served as both diplomatic hub and cultural exchange center. As Earth's cultural liaison, Lisa spent her days explaining human customs to curious aliens and learning about the 36 other species that made up the Galactic Confederation. Lisa was 35, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and brown eyes that missed very little. Before being selected for this position, she had worked as a cultural anthropologist specializing in cross-cultural communication. "Officer Reyes, do you have a moment?" The voice belonged to Dr. Kivren, the ship's xenobiologist. The Milorian scientist resembled a tall, thin human except for his golden skin and four-fingered hands. "Of course, Doctor. What can I help you with?" "I've been studying human physiological responses. Your species fascinates me." Dr. Kivren fell into step beside her. Most Confederation species evolved clear fight-or-flight responses to danger. Yet humans show inconsistent patterns. Lisa smiled. "We're complicated." Their conversation was interrupted by a blaring alarm. Red lights flashed along the corridor walls. "Warning. Coolant leak detected in Engineering Section 7. All personnel evacuate zones 5 through 9 immediately." The ship's AI repeated the message in 17 different languages. Dr. Kivren froze. "That's bad. The coolant is toxic to most species." Lisa touched her comm device. "Ray is here. Are there any crew members in the affected areas?" A voice crackled back. Maintenance team was working on the secondary cooling system. 4 crew members unaccounted for. Without hesitation, Lisa began running toward Section 7. "Where are you going?" Dr. Kivren called after her. "The danger is that way. People need help." Lisa shouted back. As she ran, Lisa passed aliens evacuating in the opposite direction. Their expressions ranged from confusion to horror at seeing her run toward the danger. At an intersection, she met up with 3 other humans from the diplomatic team. Greg, Paula, and Steve. "Heard the call," Greg said. "Maintenance team trapped." Lisa nodded. "Section 7. We'll need breathing gear." They reached an emergency station and quickly put on protective masks. The 4 humans continued toward the affected area while every other species on the ship moved away from it. In Section 7, they found the maintenance team trapped behind a sealed door. 2 Volari, a Tkari, and a Drakari huddled together as green gas filled their section. The door mechanism had been damaged by the initial coolant explosion. "Stand back," Steve called through the intercom. The former engineer examined the door controls. "I can override this, but it'll release some coolant into our area." "Do it," Lisa said. As the door slid open, Lisa and Paula rushed forward, helping the weakened alien crew members out. Greg provided first aid, while Steve sealed the leak using emergency patches. 20 minutes later, medical teams arrived. The maintenance crew would recover fully. As Lisa removed her mask, she found herself surrounded by curious aliens, including Dr. Kivren, who was recording everything on his datapad. "Fascinating," the xenobiologist murmured. "You ran directly toward a known deadly hazard." "Those crew members needed help," Lisa explained simply. "But you risked your own survival," a Volari officer said. "This contradicts basic evolutionary imperatives." That evening, Lisa was invited to Dr. Kivren's laboratory. Several senior scientists from different species waited there. "We've been studying humanity since your species joined the Confederation," Dr. Kivren explained. "Today's incident confirmed our observations. Humans display 2 distinct emergency responses that seem contradictory." He showed Lisa a recording from the ship's security system. Some humans had helped with evacuation, guiding aliens away from danger. Others, like Lisa and her team, had rushed toward it. "Most species run from danger," a Drakari scientist said. "It ensures survival. But humans sometimes do the opposite, deliberately moving toward threats. We help each other," Lisa explained. "It's part of who we are." Dr. Kivren made a note. "The human emergency response represents an evolutionary anomaly worth further study." Meanwhile, I've advised all Confederation personnel. In an emergency involving humans, observe their movements carefully. Those running away have identified the safest evacuation route. Those running towards something have identified where help is needed. Lisa smiled. Humanity was making quite an impression on their new galactic neighbors. Alan Garrett leaned against the worn metal counter of his small trading shop on Outpost 7. After 1 year of Earth's probationary membership in the Confederation, humans had spread throughout the galaxy as traders, diplomats, and cultural ambassadors. At 38, Alan had quickly established himself as a reliable merchant who dealt fairly with all species. His shop sat in the busy central market of Outpost 7, a spinning space station where ships from 20 different worlds regularly docked to trade goods. Today, 2 Milorian merchants stood at a nearby stall, their golden skin shimmering under the artificial lights. They spoke their own language, not realizing that Alan had learned it during the 6 months he'd spent on their homeworld. "Did you hear about the mining accident on Proxima?" the taller Milorian asked his companion. "Yes, terrible business. Methane explosion, wasn't it?" "Indeed. But have you heard what the human miners did?" Alan pretended to organize his display of Earth spices while listening more carefully. "Some rushed into the tunnels," the Milorian continued, "while others organized evacuation routes going the opposite direction. Completely contradictory behaviors, yet somehow coordinated. They saved 87 workers, including 26 Drakari." His companion's four-fingered hand made a sign of amazement. "They're unpredictable in emergencies. They'll either sprint directly toward you or away from you, and both reactions are equally terrifying." Alan smiled to himself. He'd noticed how other species watched humans carefully during drills or minor emergencies on the station. There seemed to be a growing fascination with human emergency responses. Later that day, a young Volari approached Alan's counter. The blue-skinned alien appeared nervous, his large black eyes darting around the shop. "You are human?" he asked in broken standard English. "Yes," Alan replied. "Can I help you find something?" "Not goods. Information." The Volari leaned closer. "Is it true that humans run toward danger?" Alan considered the question. "Sometimes. It depends on the situation. Why do you ask?" "I am student, studying xenobiology. There is rumors spreading among non-human species." "What rumor?" The Volari pulled out a small translator device. "The saying goes, in an emergency, watch which way the humans run. Then decide if you should follow them or run the opposite direction." Alan laughed. "That's actually pretty good advice." The conversation was interrupted by a loud crash from across the market. A cargo lifter had malfunctioned, dropping a large container that split open. Dozens of small creatures resembling furry snakes poured out, scattering in all directions. "Escaped rill lizards," someone shouted. "They're poisonous." The market erupted in chaos. Various alien species began running in different directions, some climbing onto counters, others freezing in place. Alan quickly assessed the situation. The rill lizards weren't deadly, just mildly venomous. He transported them before and knew they were more scared than dangerous. "Hey," he called to a human woman selling textiles nearby. "Kelly, remember that rill lizard shipment last month?" Kelly nodded and immediately began moving toward the spilled container. 3 other humans in the market did the same, while 2 human tourists quickly moved in the opposite direction, guiding confused aliens away from the area. Alan grabbed an empty crate and began herding the creatures back toward the container. Within 10 minutes, the humans had contained most of the rill lizards while keeping everyone else at a safe distance. After the excitement died down, Alan noticed a group of aliens watching him with newfound respect. The young Volari student approached again. "I observed," he said excitedly. "Some humans ran to capture dangerous animals. Others ran to move people away. Both actions correct for situation." Word of the incident spread quickly through the station. By evening, Alan overheard conversations in the station's dining hall about the human emergency protocol. A Tickery security officer was explaining to his team. When danger threatens, observe humans. Those running towards something are addressing the threat directly. Those running away have identified the best evacuation route. Both behaviors provide valuable information. Alan smiled as he finished his meal. The simple market incident had reinforced humanity's growing reputation. As he walked back to his quarters, he noticed several aliens watching him with curious, almost respectful expressions. Humanity's dual nature in crisis situations was becoming legendary. Confederation Station Alpha 9 hung in space like a giant metal snowflake, its 6 arms extending from a central hub. Each arm housed different environments, suited to the various species that called the station home. Nearly 8,000 beings lived and worked on Alpha 9, including 300 humans. Station Commander Susan Morgan stood in the control center, reviewing maintenance reports. At 46, Susan had spent 20 years in the Earth Space Force before accepting this position. Her short gray hair and steady blue eyes gave her a look of calm authority that reassured both humans and aliens alike. "Commander, power fluctuations in Sector 3, reported Officer Paddle from his monitoring station." Susan frowned. "Again, that's the 3rd time this week. Contact engineering and..." The lights flickered, then went out completely. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing the control center in red. "Status report," Susan demanded, her voice steady. "Main power grid failure," Officer Patel replied. "Backup systems engaging." "Wait, they're failing too." A computerized voice echoed through the station. "Critical system failure. Artificial gravity compromised. Life support systems at 40% and declining." Susan tapped her communication badge. "All personnel, this is Commander Morgan. We have a station-wide emergency. Remain calm and follow emergency protocols." She turned to her mixed human-alien staff. "We need to organize response teams immediately. Life support is priority 1. The station's artificial gravity began to fail. Objects started floating, and crew members had to grab onto consoles to stay in place. "The reactor core may be overheating," said Chief Engineer Rivera over the comm. "If we don't stabilize it in 30 minutes, we're looking at a potential meltdown." Susan made quick decisions. "I need 5 teams. Team 1 will evacuate all non-essential personnel to emergency shelters on Arms 2 and 5. Teams 2 and 3 will secure critical systems and medical facilities. Teams 4 and 5 will head to the reactor core." The humans in the control center immediately began organizing themselves, and the alien staff. Susan noticed Clary, her Volari second-in-command, watching with fascination. "You're sending people toward the reactor?" Clary asked. "That's the most dangerous part of the station right now." "Someone has to fix it," Susan replied simply. Throughout the station, humans demonstrated their dual emergency response. Some organized evacuations, leading aliens away from dangerous areas. Others rushed toward critical systems that needed immediate attention. In the central hub, an elderly Drakari historian named Vexnal floated near a viewport, recording the events on his datapad. His species resembled tall, thin reptiles with scaled skin and elongated heads. He watched as humans moved purposefully in opposite directions. "Fascinating," he murmured. "Some run to safety, others to danger. Yet there is no confusion among them." A young human technician named Ryan floated past, anchoring himself to guide rails as he moved. "Sir, you need to evacuate to Arm 5, Ryan told the Drakari. "We're moving all civilians there while we handle the reactor situation." "You're going toward the reactor?" Vexnal asked. "Yes, sir. I'm part of the engineering response team." "Aren't you afraid?" Ryan paused. "Of course I'm afraid, but someone has to fix it." In the reactor control room, Susan and Team 4 worked frantically to stabilize the overheating core. The temperature had risen to dangerous levels, and radiation warnings flashed on all screens. "We need to manually vent the cooling system," Chief Rivera explained. "But the controls are fried." "Can we bypass them?" Susan asked. Yes, but someone needs to access the manual override in Chamber 3. The radiation levels there are already harmful. Susan nodded. I'll go. As she made her way to the radiation-filled chamber, Susan passed Team 5, who were reinforcing the containment field. Everyone worked with determined efficiency. 3 hours later, the crisis was over. Power had been restored. Artificial gravity was back online, and the reactor core had been stabilized. The cost was high, 17 injured, including Susan, who had received a concerning radiation dose, but no lives had been lost. In the medical bay, Vexnell interviewed humans from different response teams. As the station's historian, he felt obligated to document this event. When humans run away, he wrote in his records, follow them. When humans run towards something, send help. This observation, born from the Alpha 9 disaster, would soon spread through the entire Confederation. The red soil of Proxima Centauri crunched under Lieutenant Ben Garcia's boots as he scanned the horizon. Earth's first colony world had flourished in the 5 years since settlement began. New Hope City gleamed in the valley below, home to 30,000 humans and nearly 1,000 alien residents. Ben commanded the colony's defense force, a mix of human and Confederation soldiers. At 35, with 10 years of military experience, he had been selected to establish security protocols for humanity's first extrasolar settlement. Movement at the northern ridge, reported Sergeant Amy Foster, pointing to a dust cloud in the distance. Ben raised his binoculars. Through the red haze, he could make out the distinctive silhouettes of Scourge assault vehicles. The Scourge were a non-Confederation predatory species that raided developing worlds. After months of minor skirmishes, intelligence suggested they were planning a major attack. Looks like about 50 vehicles, Ben said. Alert the city. Defense Plan Delta. Amy nodded and activated her communications unit. Within minutes, sirens wailed across New Hope City. Commander Zakara of the Chukari warriors approached. The Chukari were insectoid beings with a proud warrior culture. They stood nearly 7 feet tall, with iridescent exoskeletons and compound eyes. Their species was renowned throughout the Confederation for their bravery. The enemy approaches with superior numbers, Zakari observed, her mandibles clicking. What is your strategy, Lieutenant? We split our response, Ben replied. Civilian evacuation to the southern shelters, while our main force engages from the eastern ridge to draw their attention away. Zakari's compound eyes flickered with confusion. You will attack directly. They outnumber us 3-1. We don't need to win, just buy time for the civilians and for Confederation reinforcements to arrive. Ben watched as the human population of New Hope demonstrated once again the dual nature that had become famous throughout the galaxy. Civilian evacuation teams moved people efficiently toward the southern shelters, while defense volunteers rushed to the armory to join the main force. From his command post, Ben coordinated the response. He observed how the Chukari warriors watched with fascination as humans moved with purpose in opposite directions. Your species divides its forces, Zakara noted. Some retreat, others advance. We each do what's needed, Ben replied simply. The Scourge attacked at midday, their vehicles storming down from the northern ridge. Their forces were composed of gray-skinned, muscular beings with 4 arms and natural armor plating. They were known for their brutality and their technology that disrupted communication systems. As predicted, they targeted the city center, unaware that most civilians had already been evacuated. Ben's defensive force engaged from the east, drawing the Scourge into a carefully prepared killing zone of automated turrets and hidden bunkers. What the humans lacked in numbers, they made up for in strategic positioning and determination. Ben led a squad that repeatedly attacked and retreated, frustrating the Scourge commanders who couldn't predict their movements. 3 hours into the battle, Confederation reinforcements arrived. The combined forces pushed the Scourge back, eventually forcing their retreat. In the aftermath, as medical teams treated the wounded, Zakara approached Ben again. I have fought alongside many species, the Chukari commander said, but never have I seen a defense like this. Your civilians moved away from danger with discipline, while your fighters charged directly at superior forces. Ben nodded, too tired for long explanations. It's what humans do. That evening, Zikara addressed her warriors. Several recording devices captured her speech, which would later be distributed throughout Chukri space and beyond. Today we witnessed the human way of battle, she said. Remember this. Humans running toward danger are implementing a strategic offensive. Humans running away have identified a tactical necessity for regrouping. Both movements serve the greater objective. She raised her ceremonial staff. The Confederation military doctrine must be updated. When fighting alongside humans, observe their movements carefully. They understand the flow of battle in ways our ancestors never imagined. The Battle of Proxima Centauri, as it became known, added new dimensions to the growing galactic understanding of human emergency responses. Military academies throughout the Confederation began studying human tactical behaviors, particularly their seemingly contradictory approach to danger. For Ben Garcia, it was simply another day protecting his home. For the galaxy, it was another chapter in understanding humanity's unique place among the stars. The red soil of Proxima Centauri crunched under Lieutenant Ben Garcia's boots as he scanned the horizon. Earth's first colony world had flourished in the 5 years since settlement began. New Hope City gleamed in the valley below, home to 30,000 humans and nearly 1,000 alien residents. Ben commanded the colony's defense force, a mix of human and Confederation soldiers. At 35, with 10 years of military experience, he had been selected to establish security protocols for humanity's first extrasolar settlement. Movement at the northern ridge, reported Sergeant Amy Foster, pointing to a dust cloud in the distance. Ben raised his binoculars. Through the red haze, he could make out the distinctive silhouettes of Scourge assault vehicles. The Scourge were a non-Confederation predatory species that raided developing worlds. After months of minor skirmishes, intelligence suggested they were planning a major attack. Looks like about 50 vehicles, Ben said. Alert the city. Defense Plan Delta. Amy nodded and activated her communications unit. Within minutes, sirens wailed across New Hope City. Commander Zikara of the Chukri warriors approached. The Chukri were insectoid beings with a proud warrior culture. They stood nearly 7 feet tall, with iridescent exoskeletons and compound eyes. Their species was renowned throughout the Confederation for their bravery. The enemy approaches with superior numbers, Zikara observed, her mandibles clicking. What is your strategy, Lieutenant? We split our response, Ben replied. Civilian evacuation to the southern shelters, while our main force engages from the eastern ridge to draw their attention away. Zikara's compound eyes flickered with confusion. You will attack directly. They outnumber us 3-1. We don't need to win, just buy time for the civilians and for Confederation reinforcements to arrive. Ben watched as the human population of New Hope demonstrated once again the dual nature that had become famous throughout the galaxy. Civilian evacuation teams moved people efficiently toward the southern shelters, while defense volunteers rushed to the armory to join the main force. From his command post, Ben coordinated the response. He observed how the Chukri warriors watched with fascination as humans moved with purpose in opposite directions. Your species divides its forces, Zikara noted. Some retreat, others advance. We each do what's needed, Ben replied simply. The Scourge attacked at midday, their vehicles storming down from the northern ridge. Their forces were composed of gray-skinned, muscular beings with 4 arms and natural armor plating. They were known for their brutality and their technology that disrupted communication systems. As predicted, they targeted the city center, unaware that most civilians had already been evacuated. Ben's defensive force engaged from the east, drawing the Scourge into a carefully prepared killing zone of automated turrets and hidden bunkers. What the humans lacked in numbers, they made up for in strategic positioning and determination. Ben led a squad that repeatedly attacked and retreated, frustrating the Scourge commanders who couldn't predict their movements. 3 hours into the battle, Confederation reinforcements arrived. The combined forces pushed the scourge back, eventually forcing their retreat. In the aftermath, as medical teams treated the wounded, Zikara approached Ben again. "I have fought alongside many species," the Chukri commander said, "but never have I seen a defense like this. Your civilians moved away from danger with discipline, while your fighters charged directly at superior forces." Ben nodded, too tired for long explanations. "It's what humans do." That evening, Zikara addressed her warriors. Several recording devices captured her speech, which would later be distributed throughout Chukri space and beyond. "Today we witnessed the human way of battle," she said. "Remember this. Humans running toward danger are implementing a strategic offensive. Humans running away have identified a tactical necessity for regrouping. Both movements serve the greater objective." She raised her ceremonial staff. "The Confederation military doctrine must be updated. When fighting alongside humans, observe their movements carefully. They understand the flow of battle in ways our ancestors never imagined." The Battle of Proxima Centauri, as it became known, added new dimensions to the growing galactic understanding of human emergency responses. Military academies throughout the Confederation began studying human tactical behaviors, particularly their seemingly contradictory approach to danger. For Ben Garcia, it was simply another day protecting his home. For the galaxy, it was another chapter in understanding humanity's unique place among the stars. Peter Clark sat at a corner table in the Galactic Waypoint, a popular bar in Chicago's Alien Quarter. At 73, with a full head of white hair and laugh lines around his eyes, Peter had seen humanity's journey among the stars from its earliest days. As one of Earth's first diplomats to the Confederation, he had helped shape relations between humans and aliens for over 40 years. The bar buzzed with activity. Humans mingled with Volari, Chukri, Malorians, and a dozen other species. Such scenes had become common on Earth in the 50 years since first contact. Ambassador Clark, a young Malorian, approached his table. "I'm Nextai, journalism student at Chicago University. May I join you?" Peter gestured to the empty chair. "I'm retired now. Just Peter is fine." Nextay's golden skin shimmered under the bar lights as he sat down. "I'm researching the development of human-alien relations. Everyone says you have the best stories." Peter smiled. "I suppose I've seen a lot." "Is it true," Nextay asked, setting up his recording device, "about the emergency protocol? The one about running toward or away from humans, or is that just a xenophobic stereotype?" Peter took a sip of his whiskey. "Oh, it's true. I was there when it became official Confederation policy. But isn't it strange to base emergency procedures on just one species' behavior?" "Not when it works," Peter replied. "Let me tell you about the Draconis Nebula rescue." Peter's eyes grew distant as he remembered. 8 years ago, a research vessel got caught in a radiation storm inside the nebula. Their engines were damaged, and they were drifting toward a neutron star. Nextai leaned forward, interested. "I was leading a diplomatic mission nearby," Peter continued. "We diverted to assist. There were 6 ships in our rescue fleet, 2 human vessels, and 4 alien ships." Peter described how they found the research vessel being pulled slowly toward the neutron star, with radiation levels rising by the minute. The captain of the research vessel reported that they had 97 crew members, but only enough functioning escape pods for 60. Some would have to stay behind to keep systems online while others escaped. Nextay's compound eyes widened. "What happened?" "When we established communication, the first thing the alien captain said was, 'We've been following the human protocol. Those running toward the engine room are trying to fix our problems. Those gathering at the escape pods are organizing evacuation.'" Peter smiled at the memory. Their crew had 15 humans among them. Without discussion, some had rushed to engineering to attempt repairs, while others coordinated an evacuation plan. The alien crew members had followed their lead. "Did it work?" Nextay asked. "The repair team managed to restore enough power for a brief engine burst. Not enough to escape, but enough to give us more time for rescue. The evacuation team had prioritized who should leave first, prepared the pods, and calculated launch trajectories. When our fleet arrived, we were able to save everyone. Another alien, an elderly Drakari, had been listening from a nearby table. He joined the conversation. "I was on one of the rescue ships," he confirmed. "The human protocol saved those people. It wasn't just about running toward or away from danger. It was about trust. Each person doing what they could, where they could help most." Peter nodded. "That's the real story behind the protocol. It's not about humans being special. It's about understanding that sometimes the best response is to confront danger, and sometimes it's to escape it. Humans just happen to be good at deciding which is which." As Peter finished his story, a loud explosion rocked the street outside. The bar windows shattered, and smoke billowed in from the direction of a nearby fuel station. Without hesitation, some humans in the bar rushed toward the doors, while others began organizing the patrons toward the rear exit. Nextai stared in amazement. "They're doing it right now," he whispered, without even thinking about it. Peter nodded as he stood up, his old knees protesting. "Like I said, it's true. Now, I suggest you follow that group heading toward the back exit. Some things never change." As he watched humans moving purposefully in opposite directions, Nextai finally understood the wisdom behind the galaxy's most famous safety protocol.